Okay, so my man Teddy Stringer, before we talk about what's going on at the moment in your career, a thought popped into my head earlier, and I thought, let me check this actually to make sure I'm correct on this. So back in 2019, when you were still an amateur fighter, I was doing some stuff for the English Mixed Martial Arts Association. So I'd sent a bunch of messages out to fighters to get stuff, just like information about them that they could use, right? So I typed your name in on my Facebook Messenger to be like, I don't know if I'm even friends with Teddy on Facebook. I don't know if this will have happened, but yeah,
Yeah.
looked it up. There it is, a bunch of questions, right? So I went through those and I had a look through them, which was interesting, to hear, back then you talking about your career and ambitions and what you want to do. Like it was pretty crazy because I haven't thought about that, probably since you sent those messages. So it's interesting to go back to them and like, I was talking about your DAS choke and how it had become like your go-to thing and stuff like that. I was like, man, I haven't thought about that in quite a few years when I was going back and reading through that stuff. Like
Oh,
times change.
yeah. So, bro, it froze for a second then. That was a great question. And I got to the point of where you said the messages, and then I missed all the end bit.
I literally, you didn't miss much. I just said about how, how much times have changed, right? Since then, like it must be a trip to even think about how much has changed for you since then.
Man, I would love to. I'm gonna go and look back at those questions after this because when I was young, amateur, 19 years old, the things that were flying through my head, I don't know if it was being where I am right now, but I don't know how I imagined the path to go. I just knew that I was gonna climb up the ranks, go pro, fight in Cage Warriors, and eventually I'm gonna get to the UFC, and I'm gonna look back at this interview thinking, what did I say there? Because I always say a load of crap, but I believe every single bit of what I say. So
To be
yeah,
honest,
it's crazy how
I'll give
times have
you
changed.
I'll give you props, but you like if you're worried about that you said anything like too like big headed at the time, you definitely didn't.
Good, good.
Uh, I,
Always like to stay a little bit
I've just
humble.
I've just pulled it up then, and you just said about how in the next 12 months, that you had the World Championships, of course, coming up, some big amateur
Yep.
fights, pick up some titles, and then the priority was to become the number one ranked amateur lightweight in the UK, and then win the World Championships in November, which both seemed like they were on course to happen. So I don't think there's nothing in there that you'll look back and go, oh, geez, why
Yeah.
did I say that?
Yeah. Well, there were two lofty goals. I think I was number one in the UK when I turned pro, or I don't know. It's always funny with the rankings when they move. I was definitely number one or two when I made the move to go pro, and the World Championships just missed out on the gold medal. I fought the gold medalist Ramazan, one of my best fights to date. It was good because of the story going into it. I had a broken hand, and the two wins the days before at IMAF. Um, but yeah, pretty much I'm happy. I'm happy with what I predicted and how I went on. Obviously I'd like to have the world championship under my belt as well, but yeah, not too cocky.
Yeah, I remember that fight with Ramzan Gitanov. That was incredible, and also, I think that when you look back through every year of IMAF, right? Of course, what you want to see is two names at the top who competed for the gold, who then went on to, be prospects in their pro careers. And of course, you're 3-0, and Ramzan Gitanov, I've been hearing about, obviously since then, but in recent times as well as a guy that is doing incredible things. So, if you are gonna at least get that experience, right? At least you first of all you made it to the final. That injury, the fight itself was incredible, and the guy that you
Yeah,
fought has gone on to do some very good things as well.
I know, and definitely that's one that's going to run back in the future. Like you say, I think he might be 3-0 as a pro also right now. He's fighting in Brave. I'm in Cage Warriors. No doubt we'll both be in the UFC, and Ramazan Gitanov, let's do it again when we're in the UFC. Why not? That's what amateurs about. Test yourself against the best people when you're all on the come up, and then we'll do it again when we're at the top.
Is there anything like, because I reading through that conversation, like I said, and I'm asking you about how you're going to finance those things, and stuff like that, and setting up GoFundMe pages and having sponsors and stuff like that. Is there anything that you miss about the amateur days compared to being pro now?
Not a lot because being pro is way nicer. I've I'm getting paid to be punched in the face, which is a big pro. When you're getting punched in the face and you're paying to go to Bahrain or Abu Dhabi for these competitions, it's hard work funding it. But yeah, the one thing that I miss the most about being an amateur is the IMAF competition. And I got excited when Cage Warriors announced the prize fighter competition because I love that sort of tournament element. I love the fact that I could have 5 fights in 5 days at IMAF. That would be one of the most exciting things for me. So yeah, maybe tournament fighting might happen as a pro with prize fighter, but that's what I miss most about amateur.
Yeah, I mean the obviously the biggest talking point in regards to your pro career so far has been the MMA Fight Academy, which I wanted to dive into a little bit because I've interviewed yourself and multiple other people who are in it at Cage Warrior shows, but never really dived into a little bit more detail about it. Like when for you did it first like become something that was pitched to you? When did you start hearing about it even being a possibility for you?
So I mean, the plan was always to go with Cage Warriors, and I remember watching a Cage Warriors event. They said we're launching the Fight Academy, open applications, and then I sent forward my application. Ian Dean got in touch, and the trials happened in January of 2023, I believe, last year. And since then, it was just kind of a whirlwind. I went to the trials in January. February, I was out in San Diego training with the team, and from then it's just grown to right here, right now. I'm a part of the team. I spend most of my time in San Diego training at the MMA Academy, and the opportunities that's given me has just really propelled me forward into my pro career. And I'm excited to see where we go as a team. It's an unreal experience being part of the Fight Academy.
Yeah, I don't think I realized when it got announced like how significant it was going to be, and that pretty much every Cage Warrior show I'd go to would have at least one of you guys on there, and like it doesn't feel like oh, you can go to America and we'll help you train in America with some other guys because of course a lot of pros early on in their career you're going to want to travel, go to some different gyms, get some new looks and things like that, but that's kind of how I imagined that it would just be a little bit more like, oh, we're just going to give you a place to do that. But it is like a legitimate team, like the way that you guys travel with each other, support each other, like and also the progression like of all of you guys, I think, and the success that you've had already, it is legitimately like just giving birth to a new fight team that all like straight off the bat has a bunch of really exciting prospects in it. It's like there's nothing else like it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was the same as you when I went there January of last year. I didn't know what I was getting myself in for. And I thought maybe this is a one camp in America, experience it, win the contract. And little did I know it's part of this team. And like you say, it's one of the most exciting teams around the world right now. And that's not me just being biased. It's the best prospects from the UK, Europe, Indonesia, all in a training room together. And there's a lot of big gyms out there, but they've got the established pros and lots of people go there to train. We've got all the up and comers on the mat together. We're all so hungry trying to get into the UFC and get our big break. So the 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 motivation and the atmosphere on the mat is just so different to anything I've ever experienced. We've got so many hungry fighters all training together, and like you say, it's a big team now. The fights in London, I was there. I'm always there trying to support the boys because we live together in San Diego. We've become a close knit group, and together, I think big things are going to happen.
What did you think of the fights in London, by the way? I spoke to you for a little bit. I
Yeah,
believe the main card was just getting underway. So we spoke a little bit about some of the big fights that were going down later on in the night. Like I know, everyone was talking about the co-main event, right? And I'd heard from a lot of people that are big fans of Lonnie Kavanagh about how they expected him to completely run through Sean Da Silva, and I was like, that's a big claim because Sean Da Silva is good, and you said the same thing. Like, man, Sean Da Silva is no joke. And I was
yeah,
considering how high I am on Sean Da Silva, I was so impressed by Lonnie Kavanagh.
yeah. I mean, the fights in London were amazing. The co-main event delivered. That fight, Lonnie Kavanagh looks so sharp, but then the heart that De Silva showed to get it to go 3 rounds, that was, yeah, pure heart from him right there. So yeah, it was a good fight. Obviously, the main event, Vucenic, I trained with him leading up to this fight. I knew how good he was. He was even warming up with me, showing like, "Oh, I'm going to try and hit this in the fight." And the confidence and the ability that he has is unbelievable. And then seeing him do it is just amazing. He's seriously the top level talent, ready for the UFC whenever they call him. And then we had my boys from the Fight Academy, Tarek and Jimmy. Both went out there, fought good opponents, put on good performances. Obviously, Jimmy got the guillotine and Tarek ended up losing the decision, but it was a good night of fights. And I was amazed at the level of that show. You know, it was just 10 out of 10 from Cage Warriors, as always.
The thing you mentioned, the confidence of Jordan Vucenic, right? Like I know that this is nothing new to him headlining these shows at the Indigo. He does this like in his sleep at this point, but yeah, it feels like a different. Like I know that he is ready for the UFC, and everyone's been saying it for a long time, but it is crazy to watch when you saying about how he's coming up with things that he wants to do in the fight kind of explains it all. I think like it just looks so in control the whole time. And then the submission itself is like the perfect example because he's just like, oh, that submission's there. Oh, I'll just get that. All right, cool. Early night. See you later. I'll see you in a few months. It's so like it seems like almost matter of fact for him at this point that he knows he's the best guy in the cage on that night. So he's just gonna do him and then get paid and go home.
Amen. That performance from him was clean, clinical, and everything you expect once you train with Jordan. You know how good he is. You know the level and all the little technical details he'll give you when he spars. He does exactly that when he performs. The way he looks at people, he picks them apart and just snatch that Kimura up. Easy work. And yeah, that guy's ready for the UFC 100%.
When are you looking at potentially being back? Obviously, you fought in the Manchester card a couple of weeks ago. You mentioned prize fighter that obviously everyone on the roster is going to have one eye on that, and I think that from going through the Fight Academy and your performances to date on Cage Warriors, it made me laugh when you said about having to send an application off for the Fight Academy, considering
Yeah.
your reputation as an amateur. It kind of seems like they would see the name and go, oh well, this guy has to go in. Like any fight team that is trying to build a fight team of prospects is going to go number one amateur in the UK, you get in. Like, so in terms of the like prize fighter, but I'd imagine it's hard to, kind of put all your eggs in that basket because no one really knows yet how that's going to play out in terms of people getting picked and things like that. So, what's kind of the main focus for you throughout the rest of the year?
Exactly. I mean, my focus is to get two, maybe three more fights this year. I want to be active. Obviously, the prize fighter sign me up to that, but I'm 3-0. I'm young. Like, I'm not going to chuck my name in or try and pick any fights right now. If people want to put me in for that stuff, great. And whoever wants to call me out, great. I'll lap it up. But right now, there's no one particular that I want to fight. There's not a particular show that I want to fight on. I'm aiming for June, whether that's San Diego, they've got announced, or any other shows or dates that they announce. I'm ready to fight. And yeah, the goal's three more fights this year, finish the year 6-0 in a nice position. And maybe then I'll be able to have a little bit more pulling weight and start asking who I want and when I want them. But right now, I'm just staying true to the journey. Whatever's next, ready for it.
To go back to the messages that I sent you 5 years ago at this point, that's crazy that that's 5 years ago. I spoke to you about your game and grappling, and you said about how you liked the fact that most people considered you predominantly a grappler because that is what you just used in the majority of your fights, because it meant that your striking was a bit of a question mark for people trying to prepare for you. Through these, obviously you've had 3 first round finishes, so I still feel like there's so much more that people haven't seen from your game, from even from the amateurs that we saw back then, that we haven't seen in the pro game yet. Like in terms of your like skill level and how far you've had to push it so far in these 3 fights, like how much are we talking is there left of this iceberg? Because I feel like people are getting a glimpse of, like, first of all, your finishing ability is is the main thing, right? despite the fact they've all ended in the first round. I remember that eye poke in Manchester. Like you've proven that you can come through a little bit, not tons, but a bit of adversity when you need to. Like how much are we scratching the surface here? Because like I said, I remember the Ramazan Gitanov fight. I know that there's a lot more to come, but people maybe don't.
Yeah, exactly that. We're scratching the surface with these performances. Obviously, 3 first round finishes. I love it when it's a first round finish. A quick night's a great night for me. But there's so much more that I've got left to show. I mean, everyone looks at me now and says, right, he can finish. He's got good grappling, but there's so much more to my game. And once I go the full 15 minutes as a pro, people will start to see that. But I'm in no rush to go 15 minutes. If I can keep finishing these people in round one, sign me up. That's amazing. But yeah, there's a lot more of my skills that I want to show, and there's a lot more of my skills that I want to work on, because I can do it all in the gym, but actually executing it on fight night, that's another thing. So when I get to go and try these things out in fights, test my striking in fights, my grappling, all the developments I've been making, that's yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to doing, as well as showing everyone else how good I am.
The final thing we do have, like I said, I feel like the last few events I've been to, there's been at least 2 or 3 like Fight Academy guys on there, or at least some of you guys in attendance. I know that we have a couple more shows coming up in the next couple of weeks. Are there any more Fight Academy guys on those shows? I don't know if this will be out by the Dublin event, but definitely Newcastle and Glasgow.
Yeah, I think Dublin is this weekend. We've not got anyone on Dublin, and then the last of the boys fight in Glasgow before we all reconvene back in San Diego. So we've got two of the Indonesian boys, Renal and Cornelius, are going to fight in Glasgow. So I'll be there to support them, and then they'll have a week off, and we'll reconvene back in San Diego. Everyone will get back into camp, and yeah, summertime there'll be another lot of Fight Academy boys taking over all the shows and getting some nice wins.
Love to see it, mate. I'm sure that at one of those events, hopefully in a few months, I'm sure hopefully you'll be booked for one of them at least. So I will either see you fighting in the cage, or I'm sure I will see you there supporting the rest of the Fight Academy boys. Either way, appreciate the time, mate, and yeah, I will catch up with you hopefully in the next couple of months when you've got some news for us.
Thank you very much, man. Staying busy. You'll see me at the next show, I'm sure.
Absolutely, man. All right, have a good rest of your day. I'll catch you later.